Good day, everyone. Dodge Data and Analytics and B2W Software would like to welcome you to the first webinar in our series, Mobile Connected and Data-Driven, Exploring the Technology Trends in Heavy Construction. Today's technology trends focuses on field-centric cost management, managing project costs in real time, not accounting time. My name is Toby Schreckengast, and I'm your producer for today's meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by clicking on the chat bubble in the lower left-hand corner of your screen and typing your questions into the chat bar. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation, time permitting. If we are unable to answer your question, someone will follow up with you after the webinar. I would now like to introduce Doug Seiler, Senior Business Analyst, B2W Software, who will take you through today's presentation. Doug, you can take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. As Toby said, this is Doug Seiler. I'm a Senior Business Analyst with B2W Software. And today we want to discuss field-centric cost management. It doesn't necessarily mean just analyzing your costs in the field, but also the ability to send information back to your accounting system rapidly as well. So today we have Steve Jones, and he's with Dodge Data and Analytics, and he'll start us off by presenting us with some key findings from industry research that was conducted between B2W and Dodge. We'll also hear from Brandy Meisner, who's the CFO with M&M Excavating. So we'll have time as well at the end for some Q&A if you feel like you'd like to submit some questions throughout the process. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Steve to start out to present the information that was captured by Dodge Analytics.
Great. Thanks a lot, Doug. As Doug mentioned, I'm Steve Jones. I'm Senior Director of Industry Insights Research with Dodge Data and Analytics. And I have a really fun job. I get to do research on our industry, which is difficult to do because I was in architecture for 20 years, and you tend to know the projects you're working on, and you might know a little bit about some of the other ones that are in your vicinity. But there are so many amazing innovations and insights going on everywhere that we at Dodge have the luxury of actually being able to study this globally. These reports that you see here at construction.com/toolkit reports, these are on all kinds of subjects about technology and innovation, sustainability, all kinds of changes that are happening with practices and processes. And so I encourage you to go there, download any of these that you want, and share them as widely as possible because these are free for you. They're sponsored by companies like B2W that want us to do some quantitative research and share it with the whole industry. So let me tell you about the survey that Doug mentioned. We pulled 153 different construction companies in the U.S. and in Canada. And most of them, as you can see, work on heavy civil infrastructure, general contractors, specialty contractors, CM firms. Most of them, 83% here, do at least half of their work in heavy civil. Right? So we really wanted to try and take the pulse of that segment of the industry. You can see here the kinds of projects that they worked on. They could select all those that they did, and so you can see a lot of the projects that you guys probably work on as well. And we specifically targeted questions that you'll see us talk about just to the people within those companies who felt like they actually had familiarity enough to answer those questions. So you can see here their familiarity was at least moderate, very, or extremely familiar with the topics that we covered throughout the series that we go through. Let me share with you some of the overall findings that we came up with just about what's happening with this incredible, exciting shift towards mobile. You can see here the kinds of mobile devices that all these respondents say that they're using, smartphones and tablets and laptops and GPS devices. We also have some breakdown information about specifically what kinds within those are the most popular. You could compare that to how your firm's doing. And again, these are difficult things to benchmark if you don't have the kind of broad view that we're fortunate enough to be able to collect for you and then want to share with you. We asked people, what kind of impact are you getting by the use of these mobile technologies? What kind of positive impact is there? And you can see the dark blue percentages of people who said, I'm getting a very positive impact. The lighter blue is positive. So these are all people saying, this is really being meaningful to us and facilitating collaboration and understanding what's happening on projects, making decisions in the field, collecting performance data, controlling costs, improving the data and the quality and the speed at which you can now work more effectively with your ERP or your accounting system, scheduling, managing equipment, and improving safety. We also asked specifically about benefits. This is a theme through all of our research. We're looking for where is it that companies are seeing the kinds of tangible, repeatable, scalable benefits, right, which is really going to help to drive something throughout the industry. Increased access to data for everybody who needs it. Improved coordination, real-time performance data, increased field staff productivity, which is extremely important. Increased volume of data to make decisions a little bit less so, and still emerging, we'd say, is structured data that can drive data analytics. But this will certainly happen as more people collect data, index it, normalize it, aggregate it, and then be able to begin to conduct some analytics on it. In terms of the future, we asked people, what do you think the meaningful things will be here in the next 2 years? What sorts of workflows do you think you're going to see mobile really have an impact on? Project controls and project management and field performance tracking, very strong, more than half selected those. And then cost management and accounting, schedule, resource dispatching, and then you see it go down from there, and some of the things which are still emerging in terms of their use. But this is a trend that's definitely going to keep going in the future. So we've broken this down, the research we did, into 3 basic topics here. And we're going to do these in a series of 3 different webcasts. One about cost management today, then one about really working with field data and the kinds of data people are bringing in and how are they actually improving their performance. And then third, we're really going to take a deep dive into fleet equipment management and maintenance. So today we're going to share with you our findings around field-centric cost management. So the topics we dug into here were, what are your biggest project cost management problems? What are the most important technologies that are impacting that right now? And then on the other side, what are the barriers, right, that are keeping you from adopting and using these sorts of technologies? And then I'll look into the future 2 years out. So let me stop here for a second and engage all of you and ask you to answer a poll. You'll be able to click this right on your screen. You'll see this in a second. What I'd like to know, and we'd all like to know in general, how much today is it a challenge for you and your company to effectively manage costs on your heavy civil construction projects? Is it nothing at all, or is it up to a very high challenge? All right, so what you can do right now is just click one of those buttons that you see. Is it no challenge? Is it low challenge? Is it a moderate challenge? Is it a high challenge? Or would you consider this to be a really very high challenge? And I'm going to give it a few seconds while those of you who are on with us today can answer this, and then I'll share it with everybody. And I'll just give you a hint coming up. Nobody's saying it isn't a challenge, and really nobody's saying it's a low challenge. So I'll share that with everybody now to see. It is at least a moderate challenge, and for some people, quite a number of people, it's a high challenge or a very high challenge, right? So this is very much in keeping with what we found. When we did the survey itself, we dug into this and broke it into some of its subcomponents here. We said, what's your biggest cost management problem? And we gave people a list. We said you can pick up to 3 that are really making you crazy. And they said the currency of the information, right? How up to date is the information I have now to try and make decisions with? You're getting kind of a poor resource utilization overall of both your people and your equipment, right? Which is something everybody struggles with. And then, is the project team in the office sufficiently aware and have good visibility into the cost-related issues in the field? Those are really the top 3. After that, you'll see that people aren't effectively leveraging actual costs. Teams in the field lack timely information, and there's difficulty in managing cost, cash flow are a little bit less intense. So then we said, all right, what are the most important technologies that you're engaging with right now? And boy, you can see that the mobile applications and the mobile devices really, number 1 and 2, very strong. And then, of course, being able to then use cloud and web for real-time connectivity, the top 3, very important. Really, really, really important trends here. Then we said, okay, so you know these technologies are there. What's in the way? of adopting technology that's going to help you track real-time costs, or that's going to allow people in the field to track cost estimates against original bid estimates? Well, the number one thing is consistent, frankly, across most of the technology studies that we do in the construction industry, is that this is, to some degree, an evolutionary process that we're in right now. We're probably about a third of the way through what will be a digital transformation of our entire industry. But just the basic concerns about getting workers to use new technologies is the number one challenge out there. Concerns about how well the data now can work with existing management systems is also important. And both of those more important than the cost. So it's as if people are saying, look, we're willing to invest if we know we can get people to use it and if it can work with our other suite of tools. There's certainly very low concern about the reliability of data gathered, which is a really, really good finding. And only 14% said that they're actually, frankly, happy with where they are today. So the demand for change is there, all right, but it looks like it's kind of a sociological problem and then one of technology of integration. So then we ask, look out 2 years. How important do you think various technologies are going to be 2 years from now? Look at these numbers. Everybody's realizing and embracing the idea that all these things are going to be extremely important, right? The mobile apps and the mobile devices, cloud and real-time connectivity, this is very exciting. Nobody's saying this is a trend that's going to pass, right? Everybody's buying into the fact that this can be really transformative and transformational to our industry. So the key findings that came from this part of our study, information currency, poor utilization of resources, and that lack of visibility between the office and the field are really the top management problems. And only 14% say they're happy with the way it is today, right? Mobile apps and devices equipped with good connectivity are the most important solutions right now to improve cost management. Getting workers to use the technology and integrating that effectively, right, are the top challenges. There isn't much of a concern about data reliability, right? So I think people see that they're going to get better data by doing this. It's a matter of actually driving it through their organizations. And then mobile apps and devices with good connectivity still being seen as being very impactful 2 years out, along with some of the other things which are more emerging, telematics and big data analytics and machine automation and drones. So overall, a really exciting picture in the future. So Doug, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thanks, Steve. That's actually really good points because it's a lot of the direction that our company is focusing on. So what I'd like to do is introduce Brandy Meisner from M&M Excavating, who is, their company is a user of several of our products that are really good field solutions, and specifically Track for their field reporting. So I'd like to introduce Brandy and let her say a little bit about herself here.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandy Meisner. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at M&M Excavating, and we are, in fact, a user of B2W solutions.
All right. Thanks, Brandy. Now, I just wanted to throw a few questions at you. I know you guys have been on the system for a while. And how long ago did you roll out B2W Track, and what drove you to making that decision? And on top of that, what were the key challenges that you had to overcome in implementing a field solution at your company?
Sure. We actually rolled out B2W Track just about a year and a half ago, probably a year ago, last construction season. Prior to that, we were using or shopping for other solutions where we could allow the foreman in the field to track the information that they needed to. As an example, hours, equipment utilization, work items completed, subcontractors on site, things like that. Prior to about 3 years ago, we were using paper and pen to do this, and the data would come into the office, and we would key it in to our accounting system. So we knew that wasn't very efficient and wanted to transition to something. We just didn't know what the solution might be. So as I mentioned, we shopped around for several solutions and tried a few. But the main problem was we really wanted to start integrating all of our challenges. One of the biggest things that drove us to track was that we needed a solution that would also allow us to report deficiencies in equipment, whether it be a request for repair or report of an urgent item being down, in order to communicate better between the field and our mechanics back in our shop. And that was kind of the key component that we realized that B2W solutions go beyond just time and job costing. It went into utilization of equipment as well so that we could incorporate the maintain component module. And so that's kind of where the challenges that we had was improving communication between the mechanics in the field, between the office in the field, and the systems operating in the office, like our accounting system.
Thanks, Brandy. Just a follow-up question on that. Were you looking to strictly you were looking for productivity solutions, not just costing solutions, or in speeding up the process of getting the data to your accounting system?
I think it's multifaceted. We were certainly looking for productivity, but we were also looking for a strategic solution that would allow us to better communicate the actual productivity of a job to our field, our superintendents, our foremen, and even the crews working on job sites. They didn't really have a great handle of how productive they were or how they might be able to improve their productivity, because most of our data was financially driven by invoices or payroll, and a lot of times that is either meaningless to the field, or maybe you don't want to share that information, dollars and cents, with the field. So we were really looking for a way to not only improve our productivity, improve our communication, improve our processes, but also start to get this buy-in from our employees that they're very much a part of that productivity, and the things that they do each day have an impact on the bottom line. And B2W Solutions are allowing us to do that by reporting back in a meaningful way items like, how many linear feet of pipe did you put in the ground as compared to how much we need to get in the ground? Or, how much grading did we accomplish versus how much we need to accomplish by, this holiday, which is a deadline for us. So those things, it's more than just reporting numbers, but getting that strategic buy-in from the entire workforce.
Okay. A question on that is, and you were just saying it's not necessarily giving them accounting information costs. What I think what you're saying is by understanding their productivity and understanding how they're performing, it helps to indirectly drive the cost, the control of your costs. So indirectly in the field, they are reacting to what they see from a productivity perspective, and they're controlling the cost that goes to the accounting side.
Sure. So as an example, if they know where they stand in a project, they know if they need additional resources in order to accomplish the milestones, or just where we are in the project. It gives them much better understanding of how the project was bid, how the project should be managed moving forward.
No, that's very helpful. If a couple other questions, could you give us an idea of how did you roll out Track and the best practices that you would share in terms of what to look out for when implementing software as such in the field?
Sure.
And I know historically we've had certain barriers in the industry in terms of adoption and maybe underestimating the ability of our field people. How did you overcome those barriers?
Sure. Well, here's where it gets real. I would highly recommend that anyone who is considering implementing this solution really truly analyze how you're collecting data now. And the implementation process is not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. But the more time you spend on the implementation, the better the results will be. So let me give you a real example. In my world, the accounting software that we use is called Foundation. And I know there's lots of solutions out there, but it just helps to understand what I'm using. That's what I'm using. And in Foundation, we cost code everything. That's kind of the root of what did the person do, or what did the piece of equipment do, or what did the subcontractor do, in order to track it back to job costing. And in my world, I've been living with those cost codes for 15 years now. And what we found very quickly is that in order to get the data that we wanted, I needed to marry those cost codes to something that was meaningful to our crews in the field. And what was meaningful to them was basically we do a fair amount of work for our DOT. We're in Michigan, so MDOT. I needed to marry those items to the line items of work that they were accomplishing. And so it meant I needed to get a lot more granular and name those things in such a way that the field would understand. And I'll be very frank, my office staff and I didn't really want to do it. It's hard to change your processes, but I knew that those things needed to align in order to feed the information. We also use Estimate. So to feed the information from our estimating, while we're planning a project, onto actually acquiring the project, setting the budget up, importing the budget from Estimate into my accounting software, and then gathering data from the field in this meaningful way, and then allowing that to interact through the payroll systems, through accounts payable and receivable. And so that's where I say you have to really look at what you're doing and make sure that the systems will properly align, and it might require a step back and for you to take a breath and think, okay, how can we set up these accounts and so forth in such a way that they're scalable, so that I can add things, add cost codes, or add employees as necessary, add equipment as necessary, in such a way that it's going to be scalable as hopefully your company is growing.
Thanks, Brady. That should be helpful for a lot of the people that are listening. Just a question on you've made decisions to really focus on productivity. A question about that, is that a company decision where you don't want them looking so much at costs and they're better at focusing on productivity, or do you have other individuals in the field that want to see an instant feedback on calculated cost versus how the estimate went for the day?
Sure. So yes, we need the ability to deliver different data to different people, and B2W allows us to do that with users and what their roles are in the organization. So for someone that might be a crew leader, productivity is really the heart and soul of what they're doing. Whereas a superintendent or project manager, and even an estimator who bid this project, really needs to know the dollars and cents. So it's a way of attributing that real-time data that comes from the field back to the person in such a way that it's meaningful for their role in the organization. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's very helpful. One of the other questions, when we go back to the implementation side, did you have to dedicate an individual that was really the owner of the process and that dealt with it every day to get things implemented across your organization?
We should have. Well, let me step back and say, we're not a ginormous company. We all play multiple roles in our organization, and on Fridays I have to take out the trash. So everybody needed to buy in, and everyone needed to own a component of it. But I do think it's really important that someone be the lead, somebody that has the capacity to understand how the database, not how it works or how to code it, but that owns the process with the implementer on the B2W end. I've gotten great support from the team that helped us with onboarding and technical support and so forth, but you really need that point person in order to establish the relationship. And then if others need to be involved, you pull those people in for their ability, but it definitely requires a point person.
Thanks. That seems to be a common theme where we've found that if companies don't have a dedicated person to own it and manage it through, it's a struggle to build the processes around it at the organization. So that should be helpful for everyone to understand. I think it's time in the interest of time, we should probably move on to the Q&A session. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Brandy, at the end of this?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, but that's it. Okay.
And just before we move on to the Q&A session, I just wanted to point out that B2W is dedicated to advancement of additional field-related products, whether it be our schedule product, which is for scheduling your resources on projects, Maintain, as Brandy mentioned, which is an equipment maintenance program which can be managed by mechanics in the field. So it's something we take very seriously as being mobilely connected and data-driven. It's the direction of our business. So at that point, we'd like to move on to some questions that have been presented.
Thank you, Doug. At this point in the presentation, we invite you to ask any questions via the chat feature on the lower left of your screen. Please wait for the first question. Looks like the first question is for Brandy. How did you determine which type of software to implement, and how did you go through the evaluation process?
Sure. So first we kind of did an overview of what we had currently and what the solutions that were available inherent to the solutions we already owned. Our accounting software does have some mobile capabilities. They just weren't robust enough for us because we wanted to go a little further. We then tried another solution from another provider that was kind of a single source solution. It was just for tracking the time in the field, time and equipment utilization. And that's when we really realized that we needed to have that component of equipment maintenance. And that's when we found the B2W solution. We were familiar with B2W from their estimating solutions, which we weren't using at the time. And that's really what sold me personally as kind of a software person, and then also my estimating team on B2W, was because it seems that the organization has, number one, a focus on our industry and a willingness to develop, and also a solution that branches out into those other areas. We own estimate, we own track, and we own maintain licenses, but I'm super interested in some of the other solutions that the organization, that B2W is offering, and that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see a company that is developing and that is dedicated to our industry. And some of the solutions I saw, they were using in building trades, which is fabulous, but they're just not, their problems aren't the same as mine. And so that's why we ended up with B2W. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Brandy. Next question is for Steve. How quickly do you think these trends are shifting more towards mobile, and what are the implications for companies that are slow to pick up technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. We study both vertical construction as well as horizontal construction, and the mobile transformation is happening all throughout the industry. You're seeing it a lot with the use of building information modeling being brought right to a vertical construction, to a building construction, right, where everybody can share portable versions of that model and be much more efficient. We're seeing it more with the horizontal construction in the kinds of things we're talking about here, is bringing performance information in. I think the impact is that everybody in the industry knows we're not efficient. Everybody puts numbers in their bids, right, to pad that inefficiency and take care of all the stuff that's uncertain. The more that you now can become certain and the more that you can behave in a more efficient fashion, you're going to see tighter bids, you're going to win more work, and those firms that have adopted and embraced these technologies and done the kinds of things that Brandy's firm have done, you're going to see them be more and more successful as a result. And it's just going to be more difficult for firms who are reluctant to get involved to compete with them.
Thank you. Next question is for Brandy. How did you get your field staff to buy into the new way of doing things?
Oh, great question. I'm going to start with saying you got to get the executive team on board. In my case, I think it mentioned in my bio that I'm second generation, and you get to see a picture of me. I'm a middle-aged woman. So I first needed, we're a family business, really needed to kind of get the buy-in of the patriarchs of our organization that are on their way to retirement. That's no small task. The field was an interesting process. A lot of our field, foremen and superintendents think that they're not tech savvy. They think they're not capable. But I see an iPhone in their pocket, and I say, well, do you have an iPad at home? Well, yeah. Well, do you know how to use it? Yeah. Do you have Facebook? Yeah. Okay, you're tech savvy. You can handle this. There was also this reluctance to, you're tracking me. You're tracking everything I do. And am I going to get called out on a lack of productivity or reprimanded? And I think for us, the important component was letting our entire organization know that the goal is productivity as a team. And we put in place some unique merit-based financial incentives and things like that to let folks know that the goal is to hit the finish line together through productivity and through teamwork. And that seemed to help, but there was some reluctance both from a I can't do this standpoint or I don't want to do this standpoint. But I'm starting to see more and more buy-in, myself included. I wanted to do this. I'm a big proponent of utilizing technology, but implementing something new is, I second guess everything. And I've been very famous around here for saying, garbage in equals garbage out. And I was concerned about turning over control, if you will, to the staff out in the field. Paperwork is my life, and taking care of not only the dollars but the cents as well. And those dollars and cents are driven by the data, and it needs to be accurate. And we still work on that, but I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Next question, how do you establish a relationship between cost code and pay item?
That's a great question. So our cost codes were kind of broad. It might be, let me think of a great example. Just a second here. I'm going to pull something up. Bear with me for a second here, people. So our old cost codes would be, something like probably a good one, like earth excavation. Super broad. I mean, that could be anything. And it could encompass multiple pay items from a bid tab or from a bid. So what I needed to do was really, this came from our third generation, who is another driving force in us doing this. We have this super smart estimator that really wants to drive GPS technology, drone technology, all of these things into the field. And he helped to align the items in the field from the estimating department to the cost code items that were more high-level accounting items. And so what we did is we changed our numbering system from a 3-digit numbering system to a 5-digit numbering system, and then allowed for the 300, that would be earth excavation, to include multiple pay items. And we just had to go through and there is a scheme that departments of transportation use, and kind of fit those into that process where we could incorporate the material utilized in that item of work, the labor included in that line of work, all of the items that might be part of the process. No small task, not going to lie, but I think that's where collaboration between estimating and accounting definitely needs to take place.
Thank you. Next question, what was the information you had to present to them or training that was provided, and how long did it take to see results?
So our B2W purchase included training, on-site training. That we didn't actually do for quite some time. So here's how we rolled it out, and I'm sure that different companies are going to do things in different ways. We started with some key projects that were run by people that were close to, that basically the upper management that was running a project. We started with a small project and rolled out track on that small project. So we were implementing and rolling it out on one project to begin with. And that one project was run by the estimator in this case. So we didn't do training right away. We had a handful of people involved in implementing directly with B2W, and there were literally hours and hours of time spent on the phone with B2W implementers and technicians connected remotely to my server as we were working through the database integration and exporting information from our accounting software, importing it into the B2W database and so forth. Then when we were ready to roll it out and go live, we went live with one project that was run by our estimator that was working on the implementation with me. Then we started to roll it out to others, but we didn't really do the full training yet. We kind of gave them enough information because it really is. It's an app. It's not rocket science. Once you get it implemented, the field doesn't have the work to do. It's really the implementation that is the challenge. And if you set it up in such a way that it's intuitive to the field, it's a piece of cake. So we rolled it out, and it was sort of broken. It was, we didn't have the cost codes aligned. So the office suffered for that because we had to kind of correlate what they were doing to what we needed to do for payroll and so forth. And then over the winter, we work primarily in mid to northern and the upper peninsula of Michigan, so we get a little bit of a break when the snow's on the ground. And we use that time to revamp our numbering system for cost codes and correlating them to pay items. And we used that time to train our staff. And we used a train-the-trainer method where we brought B2W in they were here for a total of 2 visits and 6 days is what we did. And now keep in mind, we're implementing multiple modules of the software. And they worked with us intensely on site to help us get the processes in place. And then once those we were fully implemented, then teaching the foreman and so forth, we were so familiar with the software by that point that we taught them. That's how we did it.
All right. Thank you so much, Brandy. Thank you to all of our presenters, and thank you to everyone on the line for attending today's webinar. You will receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. Also, please fill out our follow-up survey. We greatly appreciate the feedback. On behalf of Dodge Data Analytics and B2W, thank you for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.